What's up, movie buffs, horror heads, and friends of the channel? Hope you're having a good Saturday morning so far. Hope you had a good Friday night last night. This particular video is going to be a live stream where I'm going to be discussing a bit about this Fear Street trilogy that just now came out. And I don't know how well it's going to do, if I'm being honest. I'm a big horror head. Horror is a hard word to say, isn't it? You've got the people that are like horror movies, which sounds like horror movies. Then you've got like British and especially Australian people that call it horror movies. And then I try to do both. I'm like horror. I over enunciate. Horror, the genre. It's my favorite genre. I love horror movies. Ooh, Brad is leaving for a long vacation. Enjoy yourself, man. Not sure where you're going, but wherever it is, I hope you have a good time out there. I do appreciate you stopping by, my friend, and that goes to you as well, King of the Hills, Patrick McCabe, Razzle Squad, all you fantastic people. We got William Dynamite in the chat. How you doing, buddy? And we've also got Colby Sullivan in the chat. Thank you guys. I really do appreciate you stopping by to share a little bit of my enthusiasm for an often overlooked genre. One that I believe in the last 10 to 15 years has really repositioned itself from being something that's traditionally thought of as being kind of smut, kind of just exploitation, cheap ways of making money, to recently it's kind of been reappraised, and we've been getting just fantastic movies out of A24. This studio has made horror films into art films, and I love that. So the new horror genre is getting a bit more respect and acclaim, and I love that. I think that's great for the genre. I think it's great for upcoming filmmakers because it is a low budget medium. It is a way to get out there and put your stuff out there for cheap. And you look at a movie like The Witch, The Lighthouse that came out, Hereditary, of course, Midsummer. I mean, there are so many really good, It Comes at Night, so many good horror movies that have come out over the last couple of years. And a couple of weeks ago, it was announced that R.L. Stine's Fear Street adaptations were going to be released on Netflix. It's been more than a couple weeks now. I guess it's been like 3-4 weeks since the first one was released. And so in a way, I'm a little behind the curve. I wanted to watch it all through before I discussed it. And then there was a ton of Marvel movie news that I covered last Saturday. So I was like, I want to talk about this. I want to be able to share my feelings with it. Hope it's not too late. And we'll see how it goes. Even if nobody shows up, I'm gonna enjoy this conversation. So growing up, I was too old for Goosebumps. However, I read quite a bit of R.L. Stine prior to that, and I'm not familiar with Fear Street. There were a couple of kind of YA horror authors that were out in that time in the 1990s. There was Christopher Pike, and there was R.L. Stine. And because everybody else was into R.L. Stine, I had to be into Christopher Pike. I was kind of that guy. And actually, reading both of them, I believe that Christopher Pike was a slightly better writer. I really was a big fan of both of them. And what they did was write, young adult, late teen, slasher horror novels that were quick and digestible and easy to get through, and they were all over the place. Goosebumps came along just a couple years after that, and it was more like my younger brother's age group, and it was incredibly popular. And additionally, it wasn't Eli Roth, but there were 2 Goosebumps movies starring Jack Black that have come out over the last couple years, kind of keeping R.L. Stine in the zeitgeist. Back in the 1990s, there was a Nickelodeon series based on the Goosebumps stories. And I think I've seen a couple episodes of that, but it was always kind of relegated to being kiddie and not super, well done. Kind of just a low budget, television produced type stuff. So here we are, 20 some odd years later, almost 30 years later, and R.L. Stine pops back up into pop culture, which makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, now's the time that people are the most enthusiastic about this. If you think about it, say the kids watching Stranger Things 5 years ago have grown up that much, and it feels like the kids on bicycles, Amblin Entertainment approach to horror is the movie's it, right? So like there's a bunch of this where it's kids dealing with adult horror situations. Well, Fear Street is a little more edgy than that. It's teenagers this time, high school kids, and the way that they structure the trilogy is 3 films, 1 released each week to create a full story, which I thought was interesting, right? They could have gone the traditional way and done a streaming series, a couple episodes for each of the different time periods, eras, not errors, but eras, and that would have been fine as well. But I like the way that they broke it up like this. I thought it was unique compared to what the way that we're used to consuming media. So I was already intrigued. I'm like, all right, this is going to be cool. And after I watched 1994, I was like, man, I really want to review that. I would love to talk about this movie. And I didn't, because I was like, I'm just going to kind of see what happens. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time invested on this first one if the second one ends up bad. And I saw the second one, and I was like, all right, that was pretty good. I saw the third one, and I was like, all right, this whole thing, generally, I liked it. As a horror fan, I thought there were definitely enough positives about it to make it a worthwhile endeavor. That said, I've got tons of issues with it. I might have as many issues with it as I do have positive things to say about it. And I'm going to do that. I know that there are certain audiences that they just want to hear the positive, and I appreciate that. But I'm not I am less concerned with being an asshole about making these movies than I am just giving you guys entertaining content. And I would rather listen to somebody just fucking put it out there than I would to be like, oh, let me find everything wonderful about this and just ignore the things that are garbage. So that's what we're doing here today. We're going to look at it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we're going to decide whether or not this is quantifiably good or if it's not. So I want to kind of break it down one movie at a time. But before I do start talking about Fear Street 1994, I did want to take a second to say I really appreciate you all for stopping by to check this out. Do me a favor while you're here. Take just a second to click the thumbs up button. It's a small ask, and it makes a huge difference. It's one of the easiest and least costing ways to show your support. Obviously, just being here, that's badass. I am super happy to have you here. While you're here, just do me a favor. Click that thumbs up button. And if you want to find other ways to contribute to the YouTube channel, there are a couple of ways to do so. And I don't always like to promote my stuff and ask for things because I'm not a serious YouTuber. I find it super silly to be super buttoned up and professional when I'm getting a couple hundred views a video. But I do want to say I have a Patreon page. I got a couple of patrons over there, and they are Team Terrible MVPs that I see in the live chat month after month, and they get exclusive content. They get to choose topics that I discuss on the podcast every Thursday night at 6 p.m. CST right here on the channel. And then also I have a store called Terrible Apparel. There's not a lot of merch over there right now, maybe about 7-8 different t-shirt designs. However, I am in the midst of drawing up some stuff right now, so there will be some new stuff on the horizon. Let me see what I got in here real quick. I probably don't want to show any of it off yet. Yeah, I don't. Keep it exclusive, baby. I always try to bury the lead. But anyways, also you can click the join button. That way you can get those schwanky green reels that you see right there in the live chat. There's also custom emojis. The longer that you are a supporter of the channel, you get different colors of that film reel, and it just shows that you're a part of the community and shows that you support the movement. So yeah, thank you again all very much. That goes for you too, Tudor07. That goes for you too, German Rifter. What's up, buddy? How you doing? It goes for you too, Drunken Seth. And it also goes for you as well, TMS SMT, and my good friend Mark McKeever in the chat. Would you rewatch all 3 movies? Pick and choose? None of them? I would rewatch all of them. Um, Nick Mayfield, what's up, my friend? Willie Dynamite. Willie Dynamite. I love that name. Love that name. And he says, as much as I love the trilogy, Dina is one of my least favorite heroines I've seen in recent horror. She's so incredibly selfish, and it's infuriating at times. I'm glad you brought that up. Very, very glad you brought that up, because that was one of my first things that dawned on me as I was watching Fear Street 1994. It opens up with a scene that is very reminiscent of Scream, of course. Scream is one of my favorite slasher movies. The thing about Scream is what it did is it at once elevated itself by kind of undermining the genre, right? Because what happened is Scream came along and it pointed to all of these tropes, cliches, conventional things that have to happen in these movies to allow them to work. And by being self-aware, it elevated itself. It was like, look, we know what this is, and we're going to play with that, and we're going to recontextualize it to where it's not supernatural. It's just people that have a love for slasher movies. And I was like, oh, that's really meta and cool. But by doing that, everything else that came out afterwards, if it's an earnest slasher movie, people are like, no, that's tired, right? So there's a lot of like meta, self-aware, postmodern slasher films that came out after Scream. If you think about Final Girls, Cabin in the Woods, the rise of Leslie Vernon, or Behind the Mask, there's other examples. Hatchet, they're all a little like self-aware, little wink to the audience. We're ironic and we know it. So it's difficult to do earnest slasher films. And with Fear Street 1994, they don't go the direction of trying to do just a straightforward slasher movie. This is a kitchen sink trilogy. And when I say that, I mean it has elements of all sorts of different horror in it. Yes, primarily slasher films, but also all sorts of other shit. Excuse me for 1 second. So it opens up in a mall with Mia Hawke. I'm like, okay, this is definitely homaging Stranger Things. Mia Hawke is in Stranger Things, works in a mall. It also reminded me of the first scene of Scream. We're going to take the marquee star, the person that's the most recognizable. We're going to open up with them, and then we're going to murder them to establish the stakes, and then the stabbing, and even the white mask and the black robes. This is very much meant to be evocative of Scream. The era. I mean, that is the 90s. Quintessential slasher movie of the 90s. And then we start, she gets killed. She rips off the mask to reveal that it's somebody that she knows. And boom, we're off to the races. That's sort of where things... It's not sort of where things... That's where things start off. And already, I'm like, this is pretty cool. I like this. The film was directed by Lee Janiak, who also was responsible for the Scream television series that came out on MTV that I never saw. I'm not familiar with that. Hey, Daryl's in the chat. What's up, my friend? How are you doing this fine Saturday morning? Razzle Squad says Scream 2 is good, and if you don't think so, you're a narc. Scream 2 is better than other Scream movies. I would say that. I don't know if it's good, but it's all right. Anyways, so yeah, Lee Janiak is responsible also for that I call it, damn, what am I trying to say? Oh yeah, responsible for that Scream series. Sorry, I don't have any notes in front of me. I got up this morning, I'm like, damn, it's almost 10 o'clock. I need to throw together a thumbnail real quick so I can jump on and discuss this stuff. And hopefully you guys have seen the series. I mean, if you haven't and you don't want to have it spoiled, we'll be here. If you do not care and you haven't seen it, well, fuck it. I get it. Sometimes I watch Red Letter Media videos even if I haven't seen the movies, but I didn't do that with Pig. Hey, what's up, Christopher Branch? I'm a certified narc now. Yeah, man. All right, so in 1994, Heather Watkins, a bookstore employee, played by Maya Hawke, is murdered by her friend Ryan, who had previously shown no indication that he planned on killing her. It's pretty obvious right off the bat. He's he's under some sort of spell. He's been hypnotized. He's not, responsible for the actions that he takes. You can see it's just dead in the eyes. The media report the massacre as the norm for Shadyside. This stuff happens all the time here, or over the years it has. It's not like it happens every day, but they dub it the murder capital of the United States, Shadyside. Oh, man, they are shady over there in Shadyside. That's one thing you know about them. For sure. So on the other side of the train tracks, the neighboring town of Sunnyvale, where things are bright and sunny and things are all great, it's the polar opposite. And it's considered one of the richest and safest cities in the country. Many of the Shadyside teenagers believe that this is a result of the witch Sarah Fear, but not Fear, F-E-A-R, no. This is where it gets real highbrow, guys. I don't know if you picked up on the subtlety here, the nuance. Sarah Fear. F-I-E-R is like fear, but it's spelled differently. I know, right? Like, it took me a good 4 hours to be able to process that. I was like, fear. Why does that sound familiar? Why does fear sound familiar? Oh, I see what they're doing here. It's like fear and fear. But apparently she placed a curse on the town before being executed for witchcraft in 1666, which that year may come up later on in this discussion, as well as later on in the trilogy. It may. Hey, that's just like your opinion, man. That's just like my response to everything. I go Lebowski on him. Hey, man, that's just like your opinion, man. Dina Johnson does not believe in the Fear Witch and has recently broken up with her closeted girlfriend, Sam, who has since moved to Sunnyvale. I wanted to say this before I get in to finish the synopsis. We were Shadyside in Navarre. Gulf Breeze proper was Sunnyvale. They thought we were like all white trash hicks, and we thought they were all like yuppies. There was a big rivalry there. But not the kind of rivalry that we see in this shit. The rivalry in this series is insane. And obviously so. There's a reason why, but it's like, it's so escalated, Like, it's a very life or death kind of rivalry they've got with their neighbors. I'm like, damn, even for us, it wasn't that bad. So anyways, yeah, Navarre, Gulf Breeze. Navarre, Shadyside, Gulf Breeze, Sunnyvale. Everybody had like BMWs in the high school parking lot. And we were all like, you fucking rich kids. We're like driving down dirt roads and shit. You know what I mean? Anyways. So, Dina's brother Josh spends his time researching the town's history, and her friends Simon and Kate sell drugs. That's her defining characteristics. We sell drugs. It says it over and over in that 1994. I really like Josh. He's probably my favorite character in the entire trilogy, and easily the least reprehensible. Well, there's a couple of them that aren't complete garbage people, but for the most part, they're all garbage people. Just the worst fucking people. Dina Johnson, our protagonist, and this speaks to the point that came up in the chat a little bit ago. Dina sucks, dude. She is completely selfishly motivated. She's overly aggressive. She's controlling. She's possessive. She's like everything that your final girl should not be. I guess that's a subversion. I guess. But really, it's just like, you gotta have characters to root for. And at first, I thought everybody sucked. I was like, these are the least likable characters possible. I like Josh, like I said. I think he's all right. And then I also like the drug dealing friends. What is it? Sam and Peter? Is that right? No. Where'd they go? Yeah. Simon and Kate. Kate's pretty fly, by the way. Just throwing that out there because I'm a man. And I thought she was, for a high school student. No, for an adult playing a high school student, which is pretty the norm for slasher movies of the 1980s in particular. But yeah, man, I actually looked it up, and the lead, Dina, is, I think, 28, and her girlfriend, Sam, is like 31. I was like, those are some young-looking adults. It's crazy to think. Like, I was watching Karate Kid earlier, and I was just thinking about how old Allie looks in it. I think it's her hair or something. But I'm like, man, fucking people looked old as shit back in the day. Like, I'm 40, you know what I mean? And I feel like 40 back in the day just looked a lot different. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But anyways, that doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing here. Just an observation that I made that I thought I'd share with you. Dina and Sam meet again at a vigil in Sunnyvale for the victims of the mall killings, where a brawl between the students breaks out. And that's, again, I'm like, fucking bunch of punk-ass kids. They think that their little rivalry is, like, the most important thing in the world. But maybe that kind of is a indictment of teenagers in general, where everything is the most important thing ever, right? Like, young love is the most intense. When somebody bullies a kid at school, it's like, oh my God, my life is over. They think I'm not cool or not popular. So everything small becomes really big in high school. And I think they're kind of playing with that a little bit when this brawl between the students breaks out. And then, oh my God, they're like driving away in the school bus, and the Sunnyvale kids are following behind them in their car. I don't know what they're trying to do. Run down a bus? What the fuck are they doing? I don't know, man. And then, like, Dina, she's like, I'll show them. And she, like, fucking chucks a cooler at the car and causes a car accident. And I'm like, fuck, dude. How many friends did I lose in high school and right afterwards for car accidents? This is yikes. Just, I don't know. I was just putting myself in that position. Like, you don't throw coolers at your girlfriend's car. That's and I know she didn't mean to throw it. She's like, let me just dump water on it or whatever. Fucking shit crashes, and they're like down in there. There's like smoke coming out of the vehicle and shit. Yeah, Will and Dynamite. Big fan of Katie. Shout out to Josh for pulling that one across the line. If it wasn't for that damn bread slicer, they might have lived happily ever after. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Where am I at? The Shady Side students attempt to retaliate, causes a car accident that lands Sam in the hospital. However, before she's taken, she sees a vision of the Fear Witch. The Fear Witch Project. The following night, Dina and her friends begin to be stalked by whom they initially believed to be Sam's boyfriend, Peter, and his friends. However, when Dina and her friends visit Sam, one of the Shady Side's past killers murders Peter and several others in the hospital. After hearing about Sam's vision, the group realizes that the accident disturbed the grave of Sarah Fear, and that Sam bled on the witch's bones, which somehow, reactivates. They only realize that the killers, they also realize the killers only want Sam, and that they cannot be stopped by reburying the body or destroying the killers. I thought that was another interesting thing. Like, there are moments when the killers are pursuing somebody and will just completely, like, ignore whoever else is there. They learn that, and that ends up to be something established early that comes back later on in a meaningful way. So I do like their, like, planting seeds throughout it. That's good storytelling, right? So I like that. As I'm talking about it right now, I'm realizing that because it's been a couple weeks since I saw it, my recollection on some of the details is pretty blurry. So I'm gonna give me just 1 second and mute that real quick so I don't get in trouble. And see what's going on here. Oh, yeah, we're pretty far into the movie already at this point. Well, I guess that's not really true. Oh, and when dude pops up in her window, it's like, you can't do that. But anyways, we do start to see pretty early on, like, Josh has got a thing for Kate. And that's kind of cool. You know, he's like his older sister's friend, which makes sense. But yeah, the Ghostface skeleton killer is just kind of sitting outside of Dina's house, and Josh sees it, and she goes to confront him. And of course, classic horror movie stuff. the killer's gone, and I thought she was gonna do the Jennifer Love Hewitt, like, what are you waiting for? And yeah, Dina definitely has friends that have the drugs, and it's really funny that Kate is like busting out all her freaking pills in front of the sisters that she's babysitting. I also think it's interesting that they kind of play with the idea of socioeconomics and the way that gentrification and all of that stuff occur. I thought that was it's not really touched upon in any meaningful way, but at least it's like a observation that's made. It's a little more authentic to what's going on in the real world than what we're used to seeing. When I say I thought all the characters were reprehensible, by the end of 1994, I pretty much had been won over by the majority of the characters, just not Dina. But I really started to like Kate, man. When the bread slicer thing happened, I was like, oh, that sucks. I for some reason, it affected me. And I will say, like, some of the practical effects in this is, like, some of the best horror kills, special effects wise, I've ever seen. That bread slicer shit was, as far as just strictly being an effective and convincing kill, it looked fucking great. But I was like, whoa. And then the fact that Josh sees it, it's like, that'll scar you. But he seemed to process it pretty well. I mean, he has a couple flashbacks about it, but other than that, it don't really slow him down too much. So yeah, Dina goes to visit what's her ass, Sam, in the hospital, and all of a sudden the guy shows up, her boyfriend shows up. There's a confrontation between the two of them where I thought they were gonna murder each other over her body. Sorry if my connection's not very good. I'm just now realizing that it's a little spotty right now, and I don't think there's much I can do about it. However, we'll get through it. If it gets real bad, I don't know. If it gets real bad, let me know. If it's like freezing up over and over again. But yeah, I'm having serious latency issues. Let's see if I can't. Stream status poor. Shit, man. Yeah, Willie Dynamite. That's how I was feeling, dude. That's how I was feeling. So yeah, then the murderer comes into the hospital, just starts kind of like taking people out. They realize they've got the blood of somebody on their hands, and they're like, oh no. Then they see the body, and then we get introduced to another cool character, and I'm going to refer to him right now as the black dude with the bandana around his head, but I don't think that's what his name is. It's a good name. I don't think that's what they refer to him as. Let's see what his name is. Crabman is what he reminded me of, kind of, from My Name is Earl. I don't know if you guys seen that before. Yeah, sorry, Mark. I appreciate you letting me know, man. Yeah, Colby Sullivan. Get the good internet out in Gulf Breeze proper. Let's see. What's dude's name? He ends up being a bigger character in the following movies. For real? They're not going to show me on the... Oh, Martin. Okay. Martin. Yeah. Okay, Martin. This is where we're introduced to Martin, and he's in jail. And we're also introduced to another key player in this franchise. Very, very key player in the franchise. His name is Nick Good. Nick Good lives in Sunnyvale, so you know he's good because his last name's Good. It's not Fear. Fear is bad. Good is good. So there's some seriously potent subtext going on here. You know what I mean? It's like metaphors. If you're not super fast, you might miss things like this, and you're like, good. What does that remind me of? Goode. Oh, it sounds like good. So he must be good. But he's kind of a dick. Like, you don't know the deal with all of the characters and who's doing what at this point. So you don't know whether or not Martin is, a criminal or not, but you can tell by his energy that he's probably a pretty good dude. Good walks out of there. Then he starts showing the pictures of Ryan to Dina. She's like, yeah, I mean, that's him, but something else made him do it. And they start to kind of develop a plan, realizing what's happening here. So they decide they start going through, because this happens in every horror movie, they got to start going through archive of old newspaper clippings. You know what I mean? There's always that montage. They like usually go to the library. They don't do it here though. What do you call those? Like, is it periodicals? When you're going through like old volumes of newspapers. It used to be a much bigger thing. Now it's the equivalent now is I'm going to Google it and scroll through the internet and give you a bunch of exposition and backstory. But I really like the way they do it in this one, because in addition to, oh my God, back in this year, this happened. And then it'll cut to, and there's this one shot of a killer in a baby mask with a baseball bat, and there's a lady sleeping in her bed, and it cuts to it real quick, and he's just fucking blah, blah, blah. Like, it shows make contact like 3 or 4 times in the shot, and you're like, damn. And then it cuts to one of those guys that's almost in like a plague doctor mask. You know, they almost look like long beaks, and he's holding somebody underwater, drowning him. So it's like, it's showing you an imagery from each of these crimes that it's showing, including, you always hurt the ones you love. I don't remember that one's name, but she was creepy. You know what I'm talking about? Was it Ruby? Yeah, I want to say killer. I want to see all the cast. That's the deal here. That's what I'm trying to do. Ruby Lane. Yep, I was right. So Ruby Lane. And then we also get to see the 1978 Camp Nightwing killer, which is very reminiscent of Jason Voorhees. He's got a burlap sack over his head, only it's like formed to his face. The Milkman slaying, dude, that's the guy with like the burn scars all over his face, and it shows him like stabbing somebody. It's pretty gnarly. Like, there are some really seriously, oh yeah, the little boy's bashing his brother's head. Yeah, some kind of disturbing stuff. And this is coming from somebody who, honestly, I am a very seasoned viewer of horror movies. And then there's that preacher, you know, with the gouged out eyes. It only kind of alludes to it in this one, but it comes back in a major way in 1666 and leads to one of the most shocking scenes that this trilogy has to offer. Just really dark, disturbing shit. Well, because of coming in contact with Sarah, Sam's starting to get a little wonky. She's not well, you know? There's something evident in the way that she's acting where you're like, yeah, this ain't gonna go well. And like I said, this is a kitchen sink kind of horror movie, so anything can happen. It's not just slasher killers running around. There's some reason why each of these people that are responsible for the killings, they're like normal, regular people, get along with everybody beforehand. And we start to learn kind of the reasoning behind that. But yeah, this, Sam's out there kind of trying to find Sarah's body to rebury her, to hopefully end this curse. And that's when her nose starts to bleed. And then she comes in contact with the bone. And that's when she sees Sarah and kind of gets a flashback of all of the, the terrible shit that Sarah went through. So you're already starting to see like, there's the witchcraft stuff at play. Then they realize that it's the blood, right? Like there's something in the blood. Oh yeah, there's a good little scene with Sam and Dina. And then there's a little scene with Josh and Kate. I think he gets a little boob squeeze in there. Oh no, that's the other two. Almost made a man out of him, though. And then they they go to the school, and they're like, all right, there's something in the blood. So they start using, what do they do? I like dude's shirt at the end when he has to change, and he like puts on that sweater. But there's a couple times through the movie where they kind of do this similar thing by tracking the blood through. And that's what I was talking about earlier, how the killers will just ignore the people who you'd think they'd be, out to murder because they're pursuing this blood. So what is it special about the blood, Well, they're able to lure all of these killers into a bathroom that they've rigged up, and they end up, closing them all in there, blowing it up. And you're like, oh, sweet. Party's over, fuckers. However, these monsters are very similar to the monsters on the werewolf on Monster Squad. Like, you can blow them to a million pieces and they just reform back together. Because they're supernatural, which kind of, explains why all of the killers in these slasher movies are able to do that. Then they end up at the grocery store. They're all getting their pills together because they've realized they're going to have to kill Sam because there's a girl who survived before. She survived the curse back in 1978, and the reason why is because she died. She technically died, which means she paid her blood debt, but then they were able to resuscitate her. So they decide they're going to use all these drugs that the drug dealers sell, just this cocktail of different medications that are going to kill her, and then they're going to use an EpiPen to bring her back to life. Very Pulp Fiction. Look at the year it came out, right? And she's like, I don't know if I should do this. And they're like, nah, we got it. This will totally, definitely work. Don't worry about it. And then they cover Josh in blood. They're going to kind of use him as bait to keep away. The idea is he's going to go running, and Josh gets scared, and he gets to have a pep talk. And Josh is like, all right, dude, I got this. And Kate's like kind of just browsing around the store for some reason. She's shopping. She's got a red X on her chest. Don't know what the fuck she's doing. She's like, oh, hairspray, cool. Sam starts puking up the medication, and Dina's like, it'll be okay. I love you. The power of love is going to save you. Well, after they end up basically thinking that they've stopped all of this, they end up back in the police station, and while they're talking to Good, Josh ends up slipping a safety pin to Martin before they leave. And anyways, Sam seems to be okay at first, but there's more to the story. She wakes up and they get a phone call from Sarah, and it's like, it's not over, To be continued. So anyways, that's kind of 1994. And honestly, I think this was my favorite of them. I think it was the kind of the most clever, kind of the most, I don't know how to say it. It felt like it reminded me of the stuff that I like the most. When you say 1994, I was 12 years old then. 1978, I hadn't been born yet. So like that 1978 would speak to people even a little older than my older brother. Those late 70s to early 80s to mid 80s slasher movies, that was just a little before my time. However, I was watching horror movies at a very, very young age. And I would actually be curious to ask you that are in the chat right now, how many of you started watching horror movies at the age of, in your teenage years? And how many of you started watching horror movies when you were a kid? Let me know. I'm very curious to see what everybody's experience is. I honestly do not remember a time that I did not watch horror movies. I remember going and seeing Alien 3, which some people may call a science fiction. I would argue that you're wrong. Alien 3 I saw in the theaters when I was 10 years old with my mother. And then I saw Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1992, same year, with my older brother. So I was, I think, 10 the first time I went and saw R-rated movies in the theater. However, I'd seen Lost Boys in 1987. I was 5. Saw The Predator probably in 1986. I was 4. I don't remember a time that I was ever not watching horror movies. I do remember being around that same 10, 11 years old whenever the original Nightbreed came out. Maybe it was 1991, something like that. So I was between 9 and 11. And there's a particular scene where one of the characters pulls these two razor blades out of his pocket and starts cutting around the outside of his face and like pulling the flesh and the tissue from his face. And my mom she was walking through the room as I was watching this, and she was like, "Nuh-uh." So shut it down. That was one of the first times she took it back to the video store. She was just like, "That's too much." I'm like, "You weren't around with half the shit that I saw, because that's not the worst of it." But anyways, all right, so I'm going to go through real quick and say Willie Dynamite says 1994, 8 out of 10. Nostalgia for 90s horror carried it for me. I think for me, I would say that 1994 was a 3 out of 5. I'm with that. Or we can go the other way and say it's a 6 out of 10. Maybe a 3.5. Maybe a 3.5 out of 5. It was good. It just still felt to have a under movie production level aesthetic.